Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we kick off a look at the Candyman films with the 2021 film Candyman. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media. With me from Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards. He is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the Pen America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
And if you say my name 5 times into a mirror, I will appear behind you and kill you.
Wow.
Aww.
Wow.
Or maybe I'll just offer you some delicious gnocchi, like what I made earlier for dinner.
I so associate you with like rockabilly and car culture and stuff that it seems to me you'd have to say your name like into like a rear view mirror or something like that. You know?
I like that. Let's create my own urban legend.
I like that idea. Also in Austin, lead singer / bassist for Austin's Rockabilly Riot Girl band Danger Cakes, and upright bassist for the Queergrass Americana outfit Brand New Key, Jamie Bahr is also the executive director of the nonprofit organization Girls Rock Austin, empowering girls, trans, and non-binary youth through music, education, and mentorship. Jamie, it's so good to talk to you again.
It's so good to be back.
Thank
Missed you.
I know. I've missed you as well. We've had so many good times. We, talking about great stuff. We did Carrie, right? Back in the day.
Yeah.
We did Burnt Offerings, which was
I've done some of the oh gosh, now I can't think of the name of the movie that had the silver ball. Phantasm.
Oh yeah, Phantasm.
All of those. Of those.
So it's been so fun.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I know. I can't. We don't even take any time off. So it's weird. We've just been. Well, no, we did take a little bit of time off, but boy, it's just been one movie after another, and it's you just look down and suddenly the tracks have gone by, and you're like, man, we haven't had Jamie on in a long time.
Well, it's been a busy year. It's been a very, very busy year for me. Where between playing, well, I say playing, but we actually have started playing with Brand New Key again, and playing shows. And with Girls Rock, we started Operation Lunchbox, providing meals to anyone affected by COVID. So they get free daily meals. Cool. Yeah. So we've served over 50,000 meals now. So it's been a busy year. Yeah.
But that's really, really amazing, and I love that you're leading Girls Rock Austin. I think that's fantastic.
Thanks.
No, it means a lot to me. Candyman. It is a 2021 supernatural slasher film directed by Nia DaCosta, written by Jordan Peele, Wynn Rosenfeld, and DaCosta. It is a direct sequel. It is literally a sequel. It's not a reboot. It's a sequel to the 1992 film, which I saw when I was in college. And in theory, it's the fourth film of the series, and it's based on a Clive Barker story, which I have not read. Drew, have you read the Clive Barker?
I have read The Forbidden.
Okay, so maybe we'll have you explain to us all the differences involved. Anyway, this film just came out just like in the last 2 weeks, and it's doing well. It made, according to Wikipedia, it's grossed $62 million worldwide so far against a $25 million budget. So that's great. So it's maybe we will see a Candyman 2. I don't know what you would call it. So let's get started with opening thoughts. I'm dying to know what you guys thought, and then we'll get into. There's just so much to talk about here. So Jamie, you're the guest. You should go first. Give us a minute or so. Opening thoughts, Candyman.
Well, I thought it was very poignant. I was really excited to see it because I pretty much love anything that Jordan Peele does. And, he didn't disappoint. Although I say he, but he wasn't actually the director. But anything that he's involved with, I will watch. So I know Nia DaCosta was the director, and I am a big fan of hers as well. And so I was really excited to go into it. I did like the movie. it did have its trouble spots though, and things
Mm.
that did bother me. And I mean, obviously, it's supposed to bother you. That's something I always feel like the Candyman films always just everybody's just a good old doomed,
Right.
and so it's hard to root for anyone and feel because what's going to happen, but it was nice that someone survived.
Yeah.
So you know but yeah, that's how I feel, and I'm looking forward to chatting up a storm about all the things that I enjoyed and had thoughts about.
Excellent. Excellent. Drew, what about you? I think this was one that you were actually looking forward to, but I'm dying to hear what you thought.
Of the movies that was coming out this year, this was one of the ones that I was anticipating
Mm.
the most. The original Candyman is one of my favorite horror movies from the 90s, and I think you can make a strong argument be the best horror movie to come out during the 90s. It's really an excellent film.
Yeah.
As Jamie pointed out, the level of talent of people involved, because everything's a reboot or a remake or a sequel, or this weird thing now that we have where there's like a sequel remake hybrid, and so we approach a lot of these with trepidation, but because we knew the level of the people involved with this, I kind of expected that it would at least be interesting, and I was right about that. I think that this is an excellent movie. It has a lot to say. Some of the core ideas in the original Candyman film are unfortunately still very important to talk about today. And I think, they're even more in the forefront in this one. It's not perfect. I can't say that it's a perfect film. I actually think I could have stood for it to be a tad. It's very short by modern movie standards. It just kind of jumps right into the story and cuts along very quickly. I could have stood for it to be 20 to 30 minutes longer, because I feel
Really?
I feel like that is a longer cut of this movie, because there's some stuff that just seemed a little not vague, but like that they could have been ideas that could have been expanded on.
Yeah.
But that being said, I didn't want it to be longer because I was bored by it or turned off by it. I think it was a great movie. The performances are terrific. There's some images in it that are extremely haunting and beautiful, and and honestly, the ending credits with the shadow puppets,
Yes.
is one of the prettiest things I think I've seen in a movie in a long time. So that's going to stay with me for a long time. So updated version of a classic horror character at this point. I think that's safe to say.
Well, and thank you, Drew. It strikes me that sometimes you'll see a reboot that takes all the artistry out of the original and presents the story much more plainly. This does the opposite. The original is a very artfully done film, but it's not full of a lot of what I would call like in your face on screen artistry. This one is doing things like those shadow puppets. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. When a character stops and tells the story of the Candyman, and he tells it through shadow puppets on the wall. Amazing. I was just I was just so amazed by that, and likewise in the closing credits. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Even some of the choices with the way it opens, like how the Universal logo is backwards, like
Yes.
you're looking at it through a mirror.
It's unnerving because you're like, I know this is a thing with the mirror and Candyman, but gosh, I hope that they didn't just simply start accidentally playing the film upside down. And what I loved was that during that opening sequence, they do this bit where they're filming up at skyscrapers into a cloudy Chicago sky, but it has the surreal feeling of looking down at the top of skyscrapers, and it's weird and displacing, and it's really great. I was just I have to say, I don't know what it means. I don't think it has any political meaning. I don't think it's this is a very political movie. I don't think that means anything.
So having, I will say, this movie, you don't need to watch the first movie to watch this one, but it does enhance it.
Yeah.
And what that is, Jamie and I noticed this when we went back and watched the original following watching this one, is that it's a reverse of how the opening credits are in the first movie, where you're looking down on Chicago, and in this movie, you're looking up.
Huh.
And it's subtle, but it's one of many throwbacks to the original film.
Wow.
I also was, to bring up the shadow puppets, like I was thinking of how much, imagery and, actual meaning could be behind that and interpreted, because, you think about the first time you see it on screen, it's being, told by this boy,
Mm-hmm.
and he is the child of the projects, and the fact that shadows have that racial connotation, and it's also a way for not just children, but if you don't have like toys to play with, making shadow puppets and little paper dolls and things along those lines are way cheaper than just having an actual toy or something you'd buy at the store. So it's something that kids who were more underprivileged would play with. And I think all of those things are setting up immediately, like the the classism and the idea behind, and it's very overt, but the whole idea behind gentrification in this movie. Whereas I felt like the original, and I know we'll be talking about that in the future, but the original, that is the main theme behind it. It's this urban legend under the guise of gentrification. And this one, it's very overtly about gentrification, but it also has so much more about present day social justice and issues with police and crime in inner cities, and just so much. There's just so much going on in this movie.
Well, one thing that strikes me, I think we should circle around, Jamie, this topic of gentrification, because I think it's really key here, and it's it's fascinating to me that the first movie, and I think it's fine if we talk about the first movie in reference, although I have not rewatched the first, so I'm just working off my memory and the way that this movie reflects on it, assuming that you maybe haven't seen it in a while or whatever. But in the first movie, it's about Virginia Madsen, the whitest of white ladies, who plays, of all things, a grad student working on folklore. I mean, so like literally the most NPR of efforts. She is a blonde woman in in a nice blouse and skirt, and she takes a tape recorder and she goes to Cabrini Green, which is a place where real people live, and is a big, crumbling, poorly maintained and poorly serviced housing unit for poor people, and it's all about her moving into that world and how that world is frightening, and the story is told really from her perspective, right, from the perspective of a middle class, and a rarefied middle class white person who is grappling with the shadows and the unknown things from a world that she's not part of.
Well, and she's also an
yeah.
academic. I think that's also important, that there's that class distinction there, as well as a racial distinction, because her friend in the film, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more when we're talking about the original, but her friend in the film is an African American woman, and she's treated much the same by the people in Cabrini Green as Virginia Madsen is.
Right, because she's part of that, again, the rarefied air of the University of wherever they're from, Northwestern. I don't know where they're actually going to college, but this is different. This doesn't center that white story. This actually comments on, Candyman, or maybe Candyman being blamed for other crimes, you know, a little girl was attacked, or a young woman was attacked by somebody coming through the mirror in Cabrini Green, but the crime that you remember, they say, is Virginia Madsen. And it's just so funny to me that Nia DaCosta is interested in just sort of taking all of this in and turning it all into part of the story. Is that you know, that inherent unfairness of centering white stories, and also saying, but not this time. This time we're going to center black characters, and it's not lost on me the irony of three white folks talking about that right now on this
Yep.
podcast. But
I said the same thing. I was like, is there anyone? This is like a really translucent cast.
it's true. It's true.
It is a bit. I've been thinking about how I am the most, you know, racially diverse person on this panel tonight, and it is a bit disturbing. But you know, we will soldier on to the best of our
Sure.
middle class liberal guilt can make us muster.
We'll do it. We'll do our best.
And Jamie's very woke, so she'll keep us
Oh my
honest.
god!
Right. I am actually literally so white that my hair is going white, and that's you know, so you know. All right. I had my 50th birthday, by the way, like you know, just like a week ago, and golly, I've never felt so disconnected from the planet. You know, that when
Aw.
suddenly you're 50 years old, you're suddenly aware that this is not my world. This is a world that I'm you know, I'm privileged to be a part of, and hell of a lot of privileged. But I mean, but it's not my world, right? And so suddenly it's putting me in the mood of observing other people's stories, and that's making me happy.
I think
Um,
that's because you're a Gen Xer there, Jason.
I, I don't know what that means. I mean, that's interesting, but I don't know what
Because I
do the Gen
guarantee
Xers?
you that
Hmm.
people, the boomers, like the people my parents' age, would not say that this is not their world. Like they would be like, yeah, because it's still our world. What the
Well,
hell?
there's so many of them.
There's so
Yeah,
many of them. Yeah, I mean, one of the great benefits of the boomers, I know that we're far afield of Cabrini Green now, but one of the benefits of there being so many boomers getting old is it's going to change for the better how we get old. You know, it's just amazing. You
that's
know,
true.
so you know, well, and then the millennials will do the same thing. Okay, so when we say this cast, you know, this movie centers a black cast, we should actually talk at least about who the characters are. So let the most artistic among you explain to me the character of Anthony, because he is the one that is, I guess, there's no real stand-in for Virginia Madsen, right? But as close as there is a stand-in, I guess
Well,
it would be
his
Anthony.
arc kind of parallels Virginia Madsen's in the first film. I think it's fair to say that he's not a stand-in, because being both, you know, male and black
Yeah.
changes his relationship to the lore,
Yes.
and even more so as we find out as it goes on. But
And
the
he's
fact
played
that
by, yeah, I should mention, he's played by a guy named Yahya Abdul Mateen II. Really, really fine actor. I mean, he's asked to do a hell of a lot in this story, and he does good. Okay, yeah, but tell us about Anthony. He's an artist.
well, the
I
fact that
think
he's a
he's. Oh,
sorry, you
no, it's
first.
okay. I was
No,
just
no, no.
saying. I think, you know, you were comparing him to Virginia Madsen's character Helen, and you know, the big part of both of them. I mean, whereas you know he has the privilege of being able to support himself as an artist. You know, Virginia had the, or Helen, I should say, was also, you know, an educator and able to support herself through, you know, that whole aspect. But
Yeah,
the thing is that they both get so obsessed with the
right.
idea of Candyman and like how it affects their work that they basically stop at no lengths, to the point where it's, you know, leads to their own demise. Because you're thinking,
There's
what's up with that hand? Why wouldn't you go see a doctor?
Okay, yeah, yeah. This is one. This movie does a thing that the first movie, like it's kind of doing its own thing in a way. The story's a different story, and the movie sets up that there's many Candyman stories, of which this is one. But
The parallels, though,
yes,
you
yes,
know,
you have
between
a
him
guy.
and Virginia Madsen, not only him and Virginia Madsen, but him and Daniel Robitaille, the
Yeah,
original Candyman, are there.
right.
Like first of all, his relationship with his significant other, his relationship is a lot better,
Yeah.
but he does have a similar relationship to his significant other to what Virginia Madsen has, whereas like her boyfriend or husband in the original movie is a professor and is
Yeah.
kind of higher up on the social hierarchy than she is,
I
and
hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
he is in a position where while he is a talented artist, he hasn't put out anything new in a while, and she's an art dealer and she's seen as kind of supporting him.
Yes.
And so both of those, like, she's a lot kinder to him
She
than,
loves him.
yeah,
Yes.
that relationship is a lot more healthy.
She is really trying to and it's a I want to capture for a moment the picture of these guys' life, because it you know, everything looks really groovy on the big screen, and their life looks really wonderful, because here they are, they're in a nice place that actually is physically more or less where Virginia Madsen found the ominous Cabrini Green last time, but they're in a nice place, and they're drinking wine out of glasses, and they got their fun gay friends, and actually it's her brother and his boyfriend, and you know, they're the picture of like the modern, you know, hip people, I guess, and you know, artistic people, and that's very similar to the world that Virginia Madsen ran through. And what's interesting and different from 1992, when you wouldn't want to bother a large white audience with a whole cast of rich black characters, that would be highly unusual. Here, that is not what the story's about. They're you know, it's a mostly black cast. They're all upper middle class. They're all doing great, which is a subtle lesson in how things have changed from 1992 to now. But then once DaCosta's made us comfortable with that, she then has Anthony go on a journey into this world that has been sort of covered over or paved over. I don't know where to go from that.
Yeah.
I think it's where
Well,
he starts.
Talk
I
in
mean,
the Lou.
yeah, the how
Well, it's
exactly?
interesting how they're like all hanging out together. He
Yeah,
actually gets told a story
that's right.
of
He'd never heard
Helen
it before.
Lyle like it's an urban legend.
Yes,
And that's what sends him further into Cabrini Green, and that's where he discovers the legend of Candyman from
yeah.
the laundromat guy.
Didn't you enjoy the laundromat guy whose name is escaping me right now?
Is that William
Anyway,
Burke? That was William Burke, right?
is it? It is Burke. Yes, that's right. That's right. William Burke, and I'm looking at the cast list. The actor's name is Coleman Domingo. So William Burke is a guy who lived in the original Cabrini Green high rise, and or high rises, I should say. And he tells a story of somebody that as a child he was frightened by and thought was the urban legend Candyman, but was just a guy probably of limited mental capacity, hiding from the police and giving away candy. And that his fear and his willingness to bring in the police resulted in this person's death. That is a story that would not have been found in the original movie. You know,
See,
yeah,
I didn't think he felt necessarily responsible for his death, because but I, even though he was the one who screamed, I
yeah.
think, you know, they show the girl that's dying, or that Candyman kills, and it's his sister.
Is that right? I can't
Yeah.
Well, that happens
It happens towards the end. Like,
later. So
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's
spoiler.
after he has become, you know, the ghostly Candyman figure, because what this movie plays at, and I think it's one of the most interesting things about it, because we're talking about urban legends, is that there's lots of different versions of
Yes.
Candyman. And what the Burke character says is, for me, Candyman was this hook-handed guy that liked to give out candy and was accused of killing
Yeah.
kids, and then he
Yeah.
was brutalized by the police and died. But you know, for Helen Lyle, it was Daniel Robitaille, the more erudite, you know, verbose character that Todd played.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that is a fascinating take on the horror, not only because of its, you know, the way it sort of plays into how as a society America tends to brutalize and blame black men, but also how urban legends change from telling to telling, and how like
Yes.
like a lot of what Candyman is based on is Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
And every time you hear the Bloody Mary story, there's a lot of variation on it, and there's different backstories and whatever. And I think this is a really cool take on that.
Yeah.
And I think I can understand. I've seen some people on Twitter who are a bit turned off by it because they're used to thinking of the Tony Todd version
Really?
of Candyman. And I understand that, because I do think the Tony Todd version is a more Clive Barker-esque creation. Like
Yeah, he's more like the Phantom of the Opera. Like,
yeah, and he's
very eloquent, and I miss the soliloquies.
Yeah, and I
But
think
you
that
actually hear some of them because they work them back in.
yes, towards the end, but not from the Candyman of William Burke. Like he's
No.
that character is a lot more of a the Fields incarnation of Candyman is in some ways more like a Jason Michael Myers kind of slasher, because his presence is only really announced by like he's got like a deep breathing kind of thing, and he doesn't really talk like the Tony character has. He's got a lot in common with Pinhead, who is this very eloquent monster. And I think that's more how Barker thinks of his creatures when he comes up with them.
So we should get to like what Jamie was pointing out, that Anthony McCoy becoming Candyman, Anthony the artist. You're right that he's not as he definitely doesn't speak poetry the way that the Daniel Robitaille Candyman does.
Well, he's not
But
even. I feel like Anthony is barely Candyman, in my opinion. Like
fair.
it's like the last 10 minutes.
He's
even.
kind of being haunted more by Candyman.
Yeah.
Followed around in the same way that Helen Lyle was.
But what I think is the actual fact that the social, going back to the whole social justice aspect of things, but there's, the idea of interracial classism, and that's actually been spinned around from the first one as well, because as where, Tony Todd was or his character, I should say, was it Daniel
Robitaille.
Robitaille said, he was a black man who was elevated, where he had the finest education and wore the finest clothes, and he was an artist.
Yes.
And that's how he ends up getting killed, is because he's painting a picture of a white woman who's supposedly a virgin and falls in love with her. And that is totally turned around with the not William Burke, I'm sorry, the
Anthony one.
Not the Anthony one. I'm trying to think, what was William Burke's Candyman's name?
Oh, his name is Sherman Fields.
Sherman Fields.
Sherman, yes. Yeah. His couldn't be more opposite from Daniel Robitaille, because he's someone who not only is poor, he's obvious, like he's living in the projects, poor. He is mentally
delayed,
stunted in some way that you're not really familiar with. Rather than him doing something that's considered risque, I say risque, but just forbidden at the time, the only accusation that they had against him was that he was putting razor blades in hard candy.
Right.
And that was obviously not true. And his character is completely, just brutalized by the police as his death. Whereas even though Daniel Robitaille was really brutalized as well, there was an actual action.
Yes.
Not to say that it was obviously not warranted, but there was something that was done. He was aware, as opposed to Sherman.
It's a story with different themes. I mean, racism is at the core of both of them, but the Daniel Robitaille story is about how racist white folks will punish you for trying to move in their circles. Whereas the story of this guy with this poor guy in Cabrini Green with a hook hand and giving away candy, that's just about how the police will punish anybody for no reason. It's a
Well, there's
totally
a
different.
reason. It's just that they're
Right, but
black.
it's a bad reason that
Right.
they victimize and brutalize vulnerable communities, and that's a totally they're both reprehensible, right? But that's a totally different story, and so it suggests that Candyman is a story that can morph, sort of like what Drew was talking about, can morph to take on kind of any theme that you kind of want. Um, there's an interesting thing going on, and I wanted to get back to Jamie, what you were talking about, where the way the plot of this movie works, and you got to imagine Nia or Jordan Peele or whoever, like working on a whiteboard and just figuring out the different pieces of the story. In this one, Anthony has kind of caught a bug that is slowly consuming him. He gets bitten by a bee, and he gets
Stung by a bee. Bees don't bite.
I apologize. Yes, I'm sorry. He gets stung by a bee, and he starts growing a rash that looks like, I guess, like burns.
Gangrene. It looks like gangrene.
It's impossible to tell, but
Or like
he's rotting.
smallpox.
It's awful, and it slowly starts to consume his hand and his face. His face starts to stipple with just all basically his whole body starts to kind of be affected by this infection, and that's at the same time that the spirit of Candyman becomes slowly visible, like over his shoulder and stuff. It's a different way of telling the Helen Lau story, but it is, it's very similar. And one of my favorites, didn't you love the scene where he has this curious conversation with this art critic woman, this very sort of ice queen white lady writer for the paper, and so he goes to her house. Why does he go to her house? I'm trying to remember now.
Well,
why.
they had kind of okay, so this is long way around. So when he does his Candyman based art piece,
Right.
they kind of have it out in the art gallery, and
Yes.
because she kind of accuses him of being a bit trite, but she also says some kind of race baiting comments to him, and then they leave, and then the art gallery owner, amusingly named Clive, by the way, is him and his girlfriend are killed by Candyman.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our first real sign of anything supernatural
that it's really going on. Yeah, there's really a Candyman outside of anybody else.
Yeah. And so this murder puts his art piece, because they die in front of his art piece, it puts his name all over the news. Now suddenly this art critic is saying that she's all about his Candyman piece, and of which of course she's not. She just likes it for the publicity. Right. And that's satirical in its own way, the way people will mine tragedy to get more success and get their name on something successful.
And I feel like he does it too, though.
Anthony does do it.
Like, he has no qualms about doing it, like where he's like, did they say my name or something along those lines?
Right.
Although that's a double edged.
I didn't think about that. Yeah,
because he said, did they say my name? Because he is becoming the new incarnation of Candyman.
Yeah, well, you say slowly, but and I would say that's probably actually like the first part where you actually realize that, because I have to say, I didn't realize he was becoming Candyman. I thought he was like being victimized by Candyman, and like Candyman wanted him, but he wasn't turning into him necessarily. But I was surprised by that. But I was also very surprised with William Burke like suddenly being like, "Ha, I'm the bad guy. I'm gonna saw your arm off now."
Yeah, that was super wild. So yeah, Peele and DaCosta, who are in the end commercial writers,
I feel
create
like
a
we
third
should say
act.
DaCosta first before we say Peele.
Well, I don't know who wrote the first draft of the script. I have no idea. Yeah, so
I think
but
I want to say she did,
she
as far
did.
as I
Okay.
know.
Well, let's blame it all on DaCosta. So DaCosta, in the end, is doing a very commercial story, and so it's got to have a third act. And so, with in that case, yeah, Burke, we
Well, before
realized
we
that.
get to Burke, I actually think it's really important that we discuss the scene. First of all, that this Candyman legend is taken into a upper middle class high school when a bunch of high school girls say the name
What was
5
the meaning
times.
of that scene to you? Like, why?
That's what Burke wants ultimately. He wants he's kind of lashing out for what he sees as societal injustice, and his way of lashing out is he wants to import this curse essentially
Right.
into the sort of upper middle class neighborhood. And now Candyman's going to kill these people. It's not going to be that Candyman's killing people in the ghetto. Candyman's going to be killing people in high rises,
Yeah.
and like the well-to-do people. And that's really what that scene is about. And it's funny because you laugh about it, but it's teenage girls being teenage girls. Like
Yeah.
they would totally do that.
Yeah,
And
I did. I remember being in elementary school in 1992 when this movie came out,
Yeah.
and being terrified because Sarah Sweetser went into the girls' bathroom and told everyone she said Candyman 5 times. And we were like, no one would go in there. And she said, it was years later I found out she was just like, yeah, I just wanted the bathroom to myself.
That is really funny. Oh my goodness.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't use that bathroom for months. Months. So
I
scared.
remember I saw this movie in college, and what I remember being struck by, really, honestly, was the Philip Glass music. The film. I don't remember if the film left all that much of an impression on me, other than the incredible music, and I have to see it again because I remember being very confused. Confused, or maybe
I
I'm
will
now
be
confused, misremembering
be
the ending.
interested in your reaction, because we have talked about this for what feels like years now.
Years, yeah, because I don't remember how it goes, and
but
so
I think you'll the original truly is a fine film.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Speaking of which,
Candyman's my favorite out of all, like, the more recent incarnations of, like, the
really,
or horror villains. Yeah, I love Candyman. I've always thought, like, even though I was terrified when I was younger, I always wanted to see this movie. Maybe
yeah,
because I was so terrified. But Tony Todd, like, he had that, like, like I said, I loved Phantom of the Opera when I was a kid. Like, that was I've seen it on Broadway like a couple times, and I always just thought that there was that correlation between them. And there's that, even though he's like, be my victim, Helen, he's there's like a romance there, and it's like this
oh yeah,
weird sexual tension, and it's definitely more risque than this movie.
well,
it is
This
a
one,
lot.
I feel bad saying that, like, Candyman in this one, not as hot. Didn't
Look,
have that like romance power
well,
that
I mean, as
the
we've
first one
observed
did.
many times, I mean, thank you for saying that, because yeah, I mean, 90s, basically, we don't have pervy, complicated sex stuff in movies the way we did in the 90s. We're entirely, it's everything's a lot more. The funny thing is, even though everything's become a lot more queer, it's also become a lot more straight, if you know what I mean. I mean, you don't have complicated sensations and like guilt-based thrills and the lure of the darkness and all that
Well,
crap,
but
because
also,
so
I think
I was
that the original movie reason why you have a monster that is quote unquote sexy is because it's being told from the perspective of a woman, whereas this is, I hate to say it, it might be a really trite thing for me to say. Ultimately, because of the twist with the Burke character, it's kind of men victimizing other men and being toxic to other men. And
yeah,
so you're not going to have that sort of romanticism, because that's more of a statement, I think, on masculinity
Right.
and the way relationships between men often are, where men use each other to kind of get what they want out of one
Well, it just
another.
has right in a sense. It just has it has different themes to play with, and DaCosta is being very moved by the themes that are on our lips right now, which are about police reform and gentrification and what
Well, also, I mean,
income disparity and what have you.
good
Yeah.
on them for kind of flipping the script a little bit, because I like the second sequel quite a bit. I don't know if we'll get around to talking about it. I hope we do, but both of the sequels prior to this one are chasing the intrigue
Huh.
of the first movie and the sort of sexual lore of the first movie, and never quite reaching the same heights. Whereas
Mm.
this movie has a lot more to say, and I think it's because and Jamie, you're welcome to disagree with me, but like, I think because this did do that, it had something new to say.
Well, I wouldn't say that it doesn't have something new to say. I would just say that it told in a different perspective.
Mm.
There's the whole thing about, like, at camp at Girls Rock, we actually talk a lot about intersectionality,
Mm.
and intersectional feminism, and it's the where certain types of you know classism, racism, bigotry, like everything intersects at some point, and so it means, like, you should, if you have ever been, chastised or ridiculed or suffered, because of this part of your body, or this is the way you are, or your religion, or whatever it is, you should be able to identify and understand, or at least empathize with what someone else will go through with that
Mm.
similar, experience. And in this movie, I feel like that's something that's, you know, dis- it's discussed, but I feel like after watching the first one again, you can really see how in that way there's like a whole outside layer of this intersectionalism, where
Mm.
the first one's told by Helen, she's the narrator, she's the one who's, it's all from her perspective, the
Yeah.
white woman. And in a way, we have all of this like white guilt, but women in general are still, not receiving the same equalities and rights that men enjoy. I say
Mm.
this right now as a woman in Texas,
Sure.
where they're literally trying to squash all of our civil liberties. And
Yeah.
it's told in that way, and that's why I believe there's that romanticism, because not only was Helen supposedly, at least I kind of feel like there's that regeneration, or what's the how kind of like the story keeps repeating, but also she's been uh
What is the good word for
reincarnated.
that?
I would
Yes.
say like that she's supposedly like the reincarnation, because he's always like, "It was always you, Helen. It
Yeah.
was always you." And so there's this whole thing like about like the, oh, it was her, but at the same point, maybe he's meaning it more metaphorically speaking, that like, oh, it was always the white woman who was actually the one getting them in trouble. It's
There's so
also like,
many links to that. I
well,
just want
yeah.
to do like. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Continue.
I was just gonna say it actually reminds me of To Kill a Mockingbird,
Mm.
and the whole thing with a woman, it's a white woman, I should say, falsely accusing a black man of some
Right.
sort of sexual assault, and that's kind of what's happened here. I mean, you don't hear in the urban legend what she did, what the woman that Tony, that I keep saying Tony Todd had the affair with,
Sure.
but
Tony Todd's
you
character,
know
Daniel Robitaille.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
Daniel Robitaille. You don't know anything. Like, did she say like, "Oh, father, no"?
Right.
Was it one of those type of deals, or did she just like, "Oh well," another one bites the dust, maybe,
Come in here and
stuff.
bust up a schiffer robe, Daniel Robitaille. Yeah.
Yeah.
The what strikes me is that the theme, and again, we're talking about how the themes get thrown up in the air and used by different people. the theme of that first film was that she becomes a part of folklore. If folklore is a theme and she becomes a part of it, the folklore is constantly moving. This movie, in a sense, is much more grounded in these anxieties, these racial and economic
But
anxieties.
the idea of becoming part of the lore is more literal in this
That's
one.
true.
Like, 'cause
Totally good point.
you have
Yes.
a guy literally becoming the new
Candyman. Yes.
embodiment of this legend, and he is more like Daniel Robitaille than the
Yeah.
Sherman Fields character. He's an artist. He's very, erudite, and in fact, at the end, they have him, when he's slaughtering the police, they
Yeah.
have him say the line, which is a direct quote from the original movie. They say, "I've shed innocent blood, but what is blood if not for shedding?"
Yes.
And it's it is an interesting take on the whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
and the fact that also, we haven't even talked about this, but the fact that he is the baby that Helen Lyle saves in the original movie.
That is totally interesting. I want to talk about that in a sec, but before that, I want to ask you a question, because, by the way, I love Vanessa Williams, who plays the mom. She's great. But did this movie? So I saw this movie very soon after seeing another horror film. I went to see Night House. Night House had me jumping in my seat, like I'm a grown ass man, and I mean like jumps, shivers, all that stuff. This movie I felt was real cerebral, but were you scared by this movie? I mean, and your mileage may vary. I mean, maybe you did find it scary, but were there any? Can you, if you think back, were there any jump scares? Were you ever worried about what was going to happen?
There was a couple jump scares, but mostly I would say it was kind of gross. Like this movie, more so than the other ones, where like there was more sound effects for the other
Yeah.
ones. This one I like was visually more disturbing. Like
Mm.
even though like there's like, well, obviously the iconic scene of Tony Todd like opening his mouth and the bees coming out. And
Sure.
Drew is the one who told me, he's like, yeah, he actually did that.
Wow.
So, there's a big difference between that and it looking very poetic versus, oh, here's my arm rotting off and I'm peeling it, and it's just like, it sounds terrible to like compare it to such a crass film, but Austin Powers,
Sure.
like the third, I think it's the third one,
Yeah.
with
Gold Member.
the Gold Member. That's it just grosses me out. He eats his own like skin flakes, and
Yeah.
there's like he's always peeling himself. That's
Ugh.
he's Anthony's just like poking at this like festering wound, and it's like bubble bubble boiling trouble. Like it is not good looking.
Yes.
And you just think no one's noticed this. Like
Well,
has this
that girl next to him, when he's having a swank dinner that he screws up for his girlfriend, the girl next to him is like, "Don't touch that." I liked her. She was, she doesn't know this guy. She's just sitting next to him at dinner, and she's like, "Don't touch that."
But
I love
before we
that.
get too far away from this, I want to say something about whether or not it's scary.
Yeah,
You
please.
made the statement that it's cerebral, and I feel like I was more frightened by this movie after I was done watching it. Like
Huh.
in the days that followed, when I would be drifting off to sleep, I found myself thinking about parts of it and feeling disturbed. And
Really?
in particular, like I'm often somebody that feels disturbed. Like one of the scariest movies to me, and I said this when we covered this, is the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because I'm really, I think about identity a lot, because
Interesting.
I
Sure.
have DID, so I have to, it's a big part of my life. So things that deal with identity and the sort of consumption of identity and loss of self are really scary to me. So the idea that you could just be consumed by this urban legend to where it just like completely takes over your identity like that started to disturb me the more I thought about it. And
I kind of took that as a play for like drug abuse, honestly. Like that whole aspect of it, like the whole like I want more, like he's like he gets the fame, starts getting the fame, and not in the best way, and he becomes worse and worse of a human being.
Becomes
He
worse and worse.
just
That's a good point.
I
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
think that
if you
that's
think about it,
wrong.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
I was thinking about how you can, that can be being possessed can be a metaphor for how, let's say you have a good friend and then they take a wrong, and it doesn't have to be because they get hooked on drugs. Maybe they just get into some MLM that they won't stop talking about. Maybe they start doing CrossFit all the time and they won't start talking about that. Sometimes we see our friends, their personalities transform because they're going through something in their life, good or bad. They're like, well, I liked them before they got into CrossFit so much. And not that there's anything wrong with that, okay? It's just a thing. But that's what these metaphors can be like, is I knew that person and then I lost that person. They maybe not be lost to the world, but they're lost to me because of whatever thing that they're into now. I've
And I
never thought
mean,
about this before, so I have not really teased out this thesis. But
well, and I'm, certainly there are aspects of this where I cannot relate to because I am, outwardly I am white,
mhm.
and there, like the whole stuff at the end where he's shot down by the police before rising up again as Candyman. Like that's that's
Yes,
based in a very specific
boy, is it
fear.
is. That's when it finally, that all comes to roost, and you haven't seen it. The movie really doesn't. The movie deals with gentrification, but BLM, police issues, that doesn't really come in very much in the film until then, other than in the story of the treatment of the guy who died at Cabrini Green, and there are some other police issues, here and there. But now it all comes up to your face, and the police are attacking him, and they're threatening the woman. Question: does Tony Todd? Please forgive me if it's obvious that he does, but it looked to me like Tony Todd is in the role at the end. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he's the one. What does
He
he
gets
say?
a he
I
he
can't remember what
gets
he
a
says.
little cameo at
Yeah.
the very end.
Yeah. That was cool.
Jamie, you were saying something before we started recording that you feel that this movie, especially the stuff, probably hits different if you are African American
oh
versus
yeah,
I
if
would
you're
think.
obviously, like
white. And
when you were saying that, asking if this was scary or not, like I feel like my race and my color, my race and my class, like definitely shape the way I
Mm.
felt during this movie, because as a white woman, I can say like I'm slightly removed from that feeling of I would say the racism, but the police brutality is something I actually have gone through, where I was pulled out of my car and made to feel physically threatened,
I'm
on
so
a danger
sorry.
case. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it happened in like 2014, but I had a police officer who was really lewd and lascivious in Cumby,
Jesus Christ.
Texas. Yeah, it was
I mean, that's
terrible.
that's so shocking to me because I mean, it's not shocking, like I've never heard of stories like that, but it's really, I mean, it's terrible.
What's the thing? I can say that, but the worst part is it's not the only time something like that has happened with me and a police officer.
mm,
So, I mean, I've been physically assaulted when I was a bartender by a police officer who was off duty and came
mm,
in and just acted like he owned the place and literally grabbed me with both of his hands. So, I mean, to some of these, I have a I'd say a healthy fear of the police. That
right.
being said, I've also, had to work with the police with my jobs, in the past and even currently, where I do talk with social services and different programs that go in. I mean, heck, I used to have to go into the Gardner Betts Juvenile Detention Center here in Austin
Hmm.
to teach inmates lessons, like music lessons, and it's a very strange feeling. I say inmates because that's how they are treated, even though
No,
it's
I'm with you. Yeah.
basically like a group home, but it's a detention center.
Yeah.
So, it's like I said, I have that healthy fear, but going back to the whole idea of the intersectionality, I, as a woman, have a whole other set of fears than you guys as straight white men.
Right.
or white appearing men, have like there's definitely a difference in our narration when it comes to life and our experiences. And but where I couldn't help but think about like how when we were doing the Constitution, right, everyone had the only white men had the right to vote, and then eventually it became all men. So there was still that like unevenness, and then it was women, and then women of color, and then it was still only Native American women, I believe, received the right to vote in like 1961, I
Mm.
think it was. So it's not that far removed from us. And there are these different things that are scary, like when she's in the back of the cop car. That is the scariest part of the movie to me.
Yeah,
And
right.
not not when it well, I say that it was gross seeing him, like seeing William Burke saw Anthony's arm off. Like that was horrible, but at the same point I was like, can he even feel that thing anymore?
Well,
I
yeah,
was like, he's probably doing him a favor. That's gangrene.
I mean, at that point,
So,
it's almost a scary adventure or a spooky adventure film. Like
well, then I feel
there's.
like it's that's when it turns to me into like a torture film.
Mm,
Like whereas like the other ones, they're just slasher films. This
right.
is the first one I felt. Oh, I say other ones. I've only seen the original. I never saw the second one, or
I
the
guess I
third one.
gotta
I
see
guess,
all of
right?
them. you
Yeah.
know but slashers don't typically frighten me. Like I don't I'm
These
not.
are a little more heady than your typical slashers too.
But if I
Like
think of it like the Halloween movies, you might get a good jump scare going. You might, if you're a carpenter, you might get some really neat thing where you sit in the audience and go, "Ooh, I got shivers when I saw Michael walk out of the shadows like that." But
Oh, I even
these,
thought you meant a carpenter,
oh yeah,
oh, I was excited when I saw how he had finished his deck.
right. He did.
He did
If he
such a
was a
good
carpenter,
job. Jason, who knew he was so handy with that machete?
yeah. He-
Yeah,
no, but yeah, okay,
like
all right.
John
Let's
Carpenter.
talk about. We talked about Cabrini Green. I want to talk about. Well, I guess we should wrap it up and
well,
and
then
get.
I think we
Yeah,
talk about what happens to Anthony and how I'm blanking on his girlfriend's name, but
Brianna.
Brianna, how she's the one that she actively summons him
yes, yes,
because
yes.
she's being
Yeah,
basically forced into making a false statement by
yes.
a dirty cop.
And so
Yeah,
that suggests that this
and
is something that never
physically
happened with
threatened.
Jason. Right. And so this is the first time I've observed that Candyman is actually being summoned, like Godzilla protecting Tokyo. Candyman is being summoned to be the hero of the downtrodden.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting to me, because something that Jamie and I were talking about afterwards, because Jamie was like, "Well, why didn't he kill her anyway?" She said
Hey, you
it.
should have just let me said it. I'm right here.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But I was just gonna say that. Like, but yeah, I was just saying like earlier today, and actually even when we left the movie, I was like, why didn't he kill her? Like everybody, even though I'm kind of like I'm glad he didn't. Like, I feel like she didn't deserve to be, but there were other, and I guess maybe because she's the one who called him, but I don't know. I'm like, are
There's
you
a
supposed to think that
loophole though.
like he sees her and he's like, "Oh, hey babe, sorry about this whole Candyman thing. I'll do you one solid."
No, there's a
Can-
there's a loophole because the cop is actually the one who says it the fifth time because he's like, "What the hell are you doing?"
See,
You
that
know.
doesn't make sense to me either. How
Huh.
can like he only said it once?
I think as
It's
long as
got to
it's
be the
said
same person because
five
that doesn't
times in the
happen.
mirror, that it counts.
I don't
Well,
think they've given this any thought at all as to
do
how
you have to
Candyman
be in
works.
front? Yeah, because
I think it's
Mm-mm.
killing the cops. It's because the cops said it the fifth time. You're
Yeah,
right though.
I just feel like it's I feel like a purist there. I'm
Sure.
like, no, that does not fit within inside the lore. Like that,
You think they're breaking their own rules.
yeah, because
I agree, and I can explain it for you. I believe that rules schmools. He doesn't like cops, so he's going to show up and
Well, would you
and
like cops if they just shot
No,
you?
of course
right,
not.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. So it's fine. That's yeah. I mean,
It's also the wish fulfillment
yeah.
aspect of monsters, which doesn't get talked about enough,
Uh-huh.
is that, for people that have had negative interactions with police officers, like that's a tremendous, as much as we're fearful of monsters, we also feel empowered by them.
Mm.
And like this scene has like that sort of dark wish fulfillment thing
I
to
like
it.
that. I like that a lot. Like somebody might. Does that you'll have people who have a real sort of fondness for like Jason and Michael Myers and stuff, even though, obviously, literally watching the movies, Jason kills people and picks them up in their sleeping bag and whacks them against trees and whatever. But kids will love him as though he is kind of cuddly. And I've never quite completely understood all that. But
As the person with a giant Jason tattoo on
right.
my arm, I totally think Jason is a bit cuddly. Not you,
Right.
Jason the movie monster.
No, I mean, I both are
I mean,
true.
you're
I
cuddly
am totally
too.
cuddly, but yes,
He's the one that I think that, like, if there was any of the monsters you could like reason with,
mm.
like, or the slasher movie guys, I think it would be Jason. Drew always is like, no, and I'm like, yeah, I think he just needs some friends. He needs some friends. He needs some support, and like maybe he'd be like, it'd be more like a Frankenstein with a little girl, not when he like
Not when
kills
he
her because
actually
he's
kills
hated.
her,
Yeah,
but
but
yeah,
like
no, I'm with you.
the first part of it, you know.
Frankenstein with the blind guy, for
Frankenstein's
instance.
monsters, yes,
He never,
exactly.
yeah. Well, okay, and that brings us to where does it literally end? Because we've got,
Well, they have
oh yeah, Robitaille
the
says to tell everyone. Tony Todd Candyman appears briefly. In other words, they are the same. The spirit of Candyman is moving through these different characters.
they have actually a really great line from the character where he compares, I can't remember the specifics, but he compares Candyman to a beehive. So
yeah.
William Daniel Robitaille, I guess, is like the queen bee, so to
I
speak.
Yeah.
have a thought about that
Yeah.
actually. Whereas when you think about people in a story, one of the things we talk about is like a drama triangle. You're at any point you could be at one of 3 points
Okay.
on this triangle, and there's either the hero, the
Okay.
villain, or the bystander.
Okay.
And at any point in time, you can be one of those, any one of those points.
Mm.
So, but in this case, every single like victim is kind of also incorporated into the story, right?
Yeah.
Like it's always somebody's mother's cousin. It's someone that you
Isn't
know
that neat?
that
Yeah.
they know. But also and this is terrible, and it's horrible, but it's something that history has done to the Black community, is kind of not just along the idea of erasure, but actually just glossing and putting everyone together. And you think about all of the probably thousands of Black and African American men who have been, if not murdered, brutalized by the police. And after a while, there's so many names, you
Yeah.
can't remember them all. I just think about like from my childhood to the ones, and even now with, Black Lives Matter says, I mean, that's part of it. Where they actually say in, as a protest chant is a say their name, like, say his, and that was something they did with Breonna Taylor, and I felt like maybe that was, or, obviously it's Brianna and in the Candyman movie, but it's Brianna and, Taylor, who was, murdered while she was, basically asleep in her bed by the police. And,
Mhm.
Like I said, there's that whole, connection, and yet at the same point, a glossing over of all of the victims, just kind of like worker bees in a hive,
Mm.
all of them together, and everyone just thinks bees are so bad, they sting. like
Right.
what they do, this damage. But really, bees are awesome. They help the world grow. They pollinate everything, and they make such good honey. So it's I think there's like all of this, and this back and forth, and the bee also even having its stripes, has that like almost incarcerated look. It's a take
Yeah.
on that, and
Oh, yeah. Good point.
the
Yeah.
prison system, and all of the injustices with that whole aspect of things. So I feel like that, at least that was my take. Like I thought that's why I said there's so much symbolism and
Yes.
metaphor and in this movie that it's like, man, it is thick. It has some
No, it
thick
really,
sauce.
really is. And that was why I called it cerebral. But I thought it was very interesting to watch. It's very enjoyable to watch if you like watching everything on the screen and just thinking about how it all connects together. It's a very thoughtfully made film, and I gotta say at after the end in the closing credits where they do this beautiful thing where half the screen is taken up as if you're looking at a projection on a wall like in the art gallery. Half the screen is taken up with the closing credits, and half the screen is taken up with this puppet show showing you all the different Candymans. That is neat.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
you're looking.
also
Yeah.
they're reasonably sparing with the theme music. They only use it like a few times, and I think it's because they knew this puppet show during
Well,
the end.
you said all the Candyman. It's not just the Candymans they're showing. Like they specifically show like what happened with Emmett Till, and
That's true.
there's specific like instances where they're literally showing more recent instances of, again,
Yes.
police brutality,
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's just so much, there's so much.
Yeah. Well, let's get our final thoughts on Candyman, and it's called And there's this thing going on the last 5 years where when you reboot something, or you do a new sequel after a certain period of years, you just call it the same thing, which I think is neither good nor bad. It's just what we do
Confusing.
now. It
I think
is
it's
confusing,
confusing.
boy. Yeah, it is. That is absolutely right. Yeah,
I would have preferred if they were like Candyman, the blah blah blah.
yeah. I would have
Like,
been
you know,
perfectly happy with that. Yes.
add something to it.
Candyman, the new hook. Who cares? It can be
Ah,
anything. It
but
doesn't matter. I will bet you that in like overseas they'll call it something else, like Candyman 4 or whatever.
Well, I mean, this is
Um,
essentially Candyman 4.
yeah,
Like,
exactly,
Candyman
totally.
4, hard candy.
I like that. All right. So, same order as before. Jamie, we've gone all over the place, but what are your final thoughts on Candyman?
I really liked the movie. Like I said, I thought there was some choppy parts to it, and as much as I was saying earlier, I love any Jordan Peele film because they do tend to be quite cerebral and have you talking afterwards. But this one, I was more like, I have some questions.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't mind having some questions, but I felt like they weren't questions because like I missed something. It was like, did I blink and miss something? Like,
Yes.
or was it just not there? And I had said that it's like there's got to be a director's cut of this somewhere, or there should
Could
be if
happen.
there's not
Yeah.
one. So I would like to see that because, like I said, I feel like we were saying how fast this movie was. Like it's quick. It is literally a straight hour and 30 minutes. Maybe it's
Thank God for that, by the
131.
way. I like movies to be 90 minutes long. I mean, I'm perfectly happy with the show.
I feel the
But
same way. I don't feel the need to have like a 4-hour movie. I am so glad that this movie was an hour and a half long because we went to see it at the drive-in.
yeah,
And so the
how fun
shout
is
out to
that?
it was fun. The Blue Starlight Drive-in.
Yeah.
I was really excited to go to the downtown rooftop location, which is actually a parking garage. And they were like, yeah, we have you're on like the ninth floor, I believe, of like the top floor of this parking garage downtown.
Hmm.
And they're like, okay, the bathroom, however, is on the first floor and or on the ground floor, and it's two porta potties. And I was like, nope, you are not getting me to go in a porta potty downtown in Austin. That's on the ground floor of a parking garage. No,
Right.
thank you. And I like it was like the first time Drew and I had soda in like months.
Oh, yeah?
So yeah, I really had to pee the whole movie.
Oh,
So I was
no.
very, yeah. So it was like an extra edge for me. Like, oh my gosh.
I
Uh,
I was thinking
very
about the fact
scary.
that you go to a drive-in. I mean, because I've been recently, but yeah, you got to get out of the car and
Yeah.
go into the little building or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Or go down 9 floors and in a
How
sketchy
crazy is that?
elevator to
Wow,
use a porta potty in downtown Austin.
wow.
So sorry, it blew sorry.
No, I love
I
it. I
I
love it.
gave a shout out, but that didn't sound much like a shout out. But hey, I'm happy that they had a first run movie at the
Yeah,
drive-in. That was exciting to both Drew and I.
excellent. Monsieur Drew, what are
I'm
your
I,
final thoughts?
I'm sure that there is stuff that we missed.
Undoubtedly,
You
we
know,
hit themes, and I feel good about that.
we did. I think we did a good job crossing this because this movie has a lot going on. I really liked this movie. I think it's going to be a movie that benefits from being rewatched several times. I think that I've said this several times. I think that if you haven't seen this yet and you're planning on it, I think that you would greatly benefit from watching the original movie first, because this is definitely a sequel. It's not a remake, even though it does kind of follow the same plot trajectory as the original. Again, it's kind of a weird hybrid of being a sequel and a remake at the same time. But it is a smart, spooky horror movie, and I'm glad it's successful, because I want more movies like this to be made, where not every it's just like a horror film that's and that's kind of interesting about the original too. Horror films about adults, because like, as much as I love the Friday the 13th movies, they really created this world where most horror movies are about teenagers, and the Candyman movies kind of buck that trend about grown-ups doing grown-up things. And I as a person that is now in his 40s, I kind of appreciate seeing that from time to time.
Yeah.
So there's that. I disagree with the both of you. I think this could have stand to be a little longer, just to flesh out, in particular, the motivations of Burke. I think.
Oh, I'm not saying it couldn't be longer. Like I said, I'd love to see a director's cut when I am in a
When
place
you
that has
Well, you can watch it
a
at home, and in a sense, that's what those are for,
yeah,
right? Or
exactly, where
Fair
I
I
kind of
have
feel
enough.
that
an
way now.
easily accessible restroom
Yeah.
Fair
to
enough.
use.
But I'm looking forward to our conversation. I would like to talk more about the original Clive Barker, The Forbidden, but I think that is better served for when we discuss the original film. Like, whoa. All right. That's all I got.
That's pretty great. I enjoyed this very much as an amazing conversation, both this conversation we've just had and the film itself. I thought it was a deeply thoughtful horror film. But like I say, I just went to see Night House. That movie had me jumping in my seat, and it was reverberating through my skin. And maybe it is my place of detachment and privilege that causes me not to feel as deeply connected to this film as that. And those are just two movies chosen at random, but I was just trying to work out, it's like, why isn't this movie scary? And I think it's because this movie is not it's telling a story that I have the privilege to not feel viscerally in my bones. And that's something for me to analyze for myself, which I guess is one of the purposes of art. Uh, but beautifully done. Such a good job. Nia DaCosta did an amazing job of rebooting something when there are so many dumb ways that she could have gone. And my God, this is
Well, we
really cool.
almost got Candyman versus Leprechaun about a decade ago. So, we should thank our lucky stars that this is the
Hey
franchise
man, I
reboot
mean,
we
look,
ended up with.
if you came and waved money in my face and said, "Write me Candyman versus Leprechaun," I would take your money without even bothering to tell you I didn't know much about Candyman, because that's how I roll. But and so somebody would do that, and I'm all for all kinds of art. But I agree, this is better. This is better than
I'm
that.
just I'm just happy that they utilized Sammy Davis Jr.'s The
Oh
Candyman
yeah,
somehow in the film, because that
so
was
good.
something where I was disappointed in the original Candyman that it doesn't do that. I mean, I love Helen's theme, and it's beautiful, or Helen's song, like, but
Yeah.
yeah, man, who can take a sunrise and
Willy Wonka. That's
yeah.
exactly who. All right. So let's get endorsements. Like whatever you want people to read, listen to, whatever you think would be cool for them to follow in your footsteps. This is a moment of great responsibility, you two. So, Jamie, do you have anything to endorse for us?
I do. I hope I'm not the only. Well, I'd say I hope I'm not the only one to endorse this ever. But if I am, then cool for me. But sad for you all who haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows, which
Mm.
is one of my favorite TV shows, maybe ever. I love this show, and the new season just came out. It's been very long. I've been longing for this show for months. I've been waiting. Like, I was waiting for Candyman to come out. This was the only movie I was tempted to go into a movie theater for. Like, like, not until COVID is under control, and especially in Texas and Austin, will I go back into a movie theater. So, like I said, so excited for Candyman. And I'm glad I got to see it in a drive-in where
Mm.
I was safe in my car,
Yeah.
just a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But What We Do in the Shadows is fantastic, and it's directed by, and I believe written as well, in part by Taika Waititi. And it's hysterical. It's kind of like if someone took The Office or a reality TV show like Jersey Shore, and but they're all vampires.
Mm.
And it is his like I feel like, Jason, I think you would enjoy this. I know
Oh,
you're
I've
not a
I've seen
fan.
some of it, and yeah, I need to watch a lot more. But fair.
As a vampire enthusiast, I
Yes.
feel like there are certain episodes that you will just love. you know, um, just I feel like it's a modern show for you, because I know you are you're into the classics. And
Yeah.
Emmanuel. What's the other one that you love? The other
It
that
touches
you've
my heart.
watched a bajillion times. I can't even
Yeah,
think of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Peyton Place.
Peyton Place. Peyton Place.
Yes.
Like, I know this is someone heard you saying that there's no good TV anymore. And they were like, "Oh, Jason Henderson, have we
That's
have
so
have
kind of
we
you.
got a show for you?"
All right.
And it's hysterical. Like, it's definitely, it deserves more than like 2 or 3 episodes of a watch.
All
And
right.
it's so short. It's I think that they're less than like 30 minutes. So it's
All right,
fantastic. It's
fair.
so
Fair.
funny. It's great.
Well, it sounds like you know what your homework is.
Yes. It's so funny because a lot of times I'll play TV while I'm working, and I'll play something that I don't have to look at because I don't want to, quote unquote, wait. This is the dumbest thing, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't want to waste the show that I haven't seen yet. You know what I mean? Because
Oh yeah.
I want to give a show my attention and look at it and stuff. And so I can't, and I don't multitask TV that's new, or movies. I want to like look at them. And so I wind up taking years to get around to something new that somebody recommends, and like, well, what have you been watching? I don't know. I was playing some episodes of Sea Hunt. I was like, and so it's yeah, I don't know. But that's all my fault. But I appreciate that. By the way, that show has What We Do in the Shadows has Matt Berry, who I love, and he's one of the stars of Dark Place, which is on
Yes.
Prime now. And holy crap, is that a funny show? Drew, what about you? What do you have to endorse?
So first of all, go to Patreon, look up Halloween Man Comics, become a patron on Patreon, support my comic. that way. Secondly, if you are going to New York Comic Con, Jamie and I are going to be there in the small press area. Our
When is
table.
this? When is New York
That
Comic
is
Con?
in October.
October 7th through 11th.
Yeah, and let's see here. I know I should have pulled up my
At the Javits Center in New York City, right in the
I know
heart.
it very well. I know it
my
well.
table number is
1847.
Look at you! You're so
Wow.
better at this than
me.
I am. Yeah, I say Jamie's so much more organized than I am.
Man, I've spent so much time at the Javits Center. I mean, you know,
I have
different
too.
shows. So it's yeah. The cool thing is you can, if you're staying in Midtown, you can walk. You know, and it's nice.
Yeah, we are. So
That's
we'll
cool.
be at the Pastana.
Love it.
So
Man, I wish I were gonna be there. I wish I could see you there. That sounds fantastic.
It's
Wow.
gonna be exciting / scary since it's the first convention that I have done since COVID started and the first big indoor event that I've done. But if I'm if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, right? So that's
It's up to Drew, New York, New York.
That's so true.
Yeah.
But the other non-personal thing that I am going to endorse is very recently been a lot of people who are longtime members of Castle of Horror know that I am a big fan of the Marvel Comics superhero team, the Fantastic Four. It was very recently their 60th anniversary. So two things that I've done. I have dug out my John Byrne Fantastic Four hardcover omnibus, and I've been rereading all those good John Byrne issues of Fantastic Four. Yes, I know, like everybody's like, well, why not the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby issues, Drew? And I was like, well, because I've read those more often.
Sure.
So I want to read something that feels fresher. But also, I have gone on Disney and I have checked out Fantastic Four World's Greatest Heroes, which is an anime version of the Fantastic Four that came out around the time of the 2005 movie on Cartoon Network. And at the time, I remember being kind of put off by character designs because they're they're very different from your typical they don't have very much of the comic book versions in them. They look like anime characters, but being older and wiser, I think that this is a damn good cartoon version of the Fantastic Four. And actually, the Human Torch is kind of a perfect character to turn into an anime hero. Like he's got a perfect personality for it. But if you were like me and didn't really give it a fair chance the first time, I think it's a good time to revisit it on Disney Plus because I think it's a worthwhile addition to the history of the Fantastic Four. But those are my two non-personal endorsements. The rest of my endorsements, they're all self-serving this week, baby.
Beautiful. No, that was fantastic. And man,
I see what you did.
Yes. No, but I back to New York. I wish you all the best. I cannot wait to hear how it goes. I got two endorsements. One is an article in Time magazine from August 27th, which is when this movie Candyman came out, and it's called "How Candyman Reclaims the History of Cabrini Green." If you want to read more about the high rises in Chicago and what's happened to them since, and about the gentrification and about how it plays into the movie, really neat article. One of many, but that was a good one. And also, I can't wait to talk about the new What You Did Last Summer, but it's not here yet. So just about a month, and then I'm a big Lois Duncan fan, so that's just something I'm anticipating. And I have to say, if you go to webtoons.com, TOONS, webtoons.com, there is a new series called Batman Wayne Family Adventures that is funny as heck. My daughter Sophia texted me from college and said, "You have got to check out the Wayne Family Adventures. I love it because it's all Bruce Wayne and the various Robins and the various ex-Robins all just sort of getting into hijinks, and it's fantastic." And so I recommend that. And that's
Jason, I have a question real quick. You
yeah.
just said I Know What You Did Last Summer is coming out.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
a reboot of I Know What You Did Last Summer with
Well,
like
like okay,
Jennifer
so
Love
like
Hewitt.
Lois, new reboot, total reboot.
Okay.
Lois Duncan wrote the original suspense thriller, I Know What You Did Last Summer, which was about college students covering up
Yeah.
a crime. Basically the same plot, except for distinctly distinctly right after Vietnam. It was the Vietnam era, right? And it's very 70s, and I love it. It's a good book, really good book. But just it's of its time. And then that's 90s movie. The 90s movie is not that good, but it's fine, whatever. This
I will like
you'll go
I
better than fine, will you? Okay.
I don't know. No. I think it's fair to call it fine. I don't think it's good, but I think it's having rewatched it recently, like for
Yeah.
the first time in probably at least 5 years, maybe longer than that. It's a solid slasher movie. Like it's like not it's better than I remembered it being. What was
in
not
many
bored.
ways, it is much more stylish than the book.
Oh, I'm
'cause they
sure. I've
invent
never read the book, so like I have no
They,
attachment.
and
to
this
that.
is a good. I mean, this is me defending it. It introduced the iconography of the Gorton fisherman, killer guy from that. So
And another slasher movie villain with a hook for a hand.
right, for sure, for
Sure.
sure. So
There's a lot of movie villains with
Why didn't
hooks.
they do
I mean,
that?
Captain.
That makes more sense than Candyman versus Leprechaun.
That would have made total sense. That'd be so funny. Yes. Yeah. But anyway, there's a new one, and I think it's going to be a Prime series, miniseries kind of thing.
Ooh.
Because we've now had these really well done, kind of primo grade A, suspense miniseries coming from the services like Prime and so forth. So I think that's what it is. I don't, there's always things I want that'll never happen. They are never going to just make it take place in the 70s. I would like that. I would really like it if they just put it back in time, but they won't do that, and that's fine.
Maybe
Well,
they.
period.
You don't know.
Period.
Yeah.
I will say that like a lot of the times with television shows, period is not something that sometimes they don't want to pay the extra money, because if you're already doing like a genre thing, there's going to be a degree of special effects, and
Yes.
then you have to go the extra mile and pay for period cost. I mean, this is a lot easier to recreate than like the Victorian era or something. That's
For sure.
Part of the reason why Penny Dreadful didn't get more seasons than it did is that they're constantly having to do this lavish period piece. But I feel you there. I wish there were more period pieces. I think that they're cool. Like I really enjoyed it last year when we did Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and we were able to.
And it takes place in the 60s, right? Yeah. I mean, on the other hand, I can totally see the argument. And by the way, I just looked it up. It will be a modern retelling. I mean, I can see the argument because Lois Duncan wasn't writing a period piece. Lois Duncan was writing something where if you were somebody you could go, oh yeah, I recognize this kid. It's like somebody I go to school with, or somebody that's younger than me that goes to school now. So it wasn't her notion that it was trapped in amber, and so to some extent there's no reason to be overly slavish to that. So
well, it's the argument when they did the new version of The Invisible Man, they made that contemporary, and from what I understand, the version of Dracula that they are now working on is going to be the Dracula story but contemporary. I understand, but see, I personally would prefer it to be, Gothic castles and horse-drawn carriages and
me too. For sure.
They have just did that though. We just got that Dracula.
That's true. The Netflix Dracula was.
I know,
which was really good.
It was really good. People really made fun of the London accent that Dracula had, but I thought it was wonderful and funny.
He was kind of a Cary Grant Dracula.
It was great. It was great. I loved it.
Yeah. I
didn't see,
by
by the way,
at one point.
there was a new oh gosh, now I've forgotten. There's the Daphne du Maurier story. Now I've forgotten it. There was a new Daphne du Maurier miniseries that was period, and but I don't think we've gotten it here in the United States. So when I figure out what that was, I'll just put it on the Facebook.
I would like to do like, speaking of something that I watched recently, and I think I'm not going to call it an endorsement, but I do think we should do an episode on it. Is the 1977 BBC Dracula with Louis Jordan?
Oh, I would love to
Like,
see that. I love Louis Jordan. Yeah, that would be.
It's an interesting version, and I've only seen it twice, but I think we should stick a pin in that. And
So many, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see that because so many great movies that I enjoy with Louis Jordan because he's so good in Decameron Nights and Three Coins in the Fountain and The Best of Everything, and he ate like sheep's eyeballs in Octopussy. So
oh, I
Louis
forgot
Jordan
about that.
is where it's at. Yes. All right. Everyone have a fantastic evening. I'm so thankful that you would take this time. And I think we're going to be doing the old Candyman, right? Isn't it?
Yeah,
The
I'm
OG.
excited.
So is
Yeah.
that like in just like 3 days? Is that what we're doing? Okay.
I guess we'll be talking about that over email.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. Anyway, real soon, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. I'm so thankful that you would spend the evening with us. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.